Well, welcome everybody. Here it is Thursday, June 10th, 2021. And we are here tonight and we're going to talk about accountability. Say more, Leah. Set up the front.
Accountability. So the piece around accountability that I was feeling into was linked really more with responsibility. And when a particular individual or a group of individuals, but it's usually, if you think about it, like just a person in your life, is there anybody in your life that says they're going to do something and then they don't do it? They don't follow through with their intentions. So right now, just going to take a moment and think about, is there anyone in your life that's like, oh yeah, I'll make that call, or I'll take out the trash, or I'll do the dishes, or I'll fill that paperwork out. And then they don't do it. And then take a moment and become more aware, conscious of the emotional reaction that you have when somebody says they're going to do something and they don't do it. Frustration. Maybe you feel disrespected, confused, angry, resentful. You might do so much for them and they're not willing to do this one little thing for you. So just take a moment and feel into all of the emotions that come up when this situation arises in your life. And it might be daily, or it might be once a month. Or you say to somebody, I've got this really important thing I want to talk about, but I really want it to be confidential. Can you not share this with anyone? Oh, yeah, absolutely. I won't share this with anyone. And then 2 weeks later, word gets back that they shared it with somebody. They broke your confidence. They broke your trust. You feel betrayed. And so as you take a moment to kind of feel into all the emotions that come up when you've asked somebody to do something, when you've asked them to be a certain way, and then they don't. When you feel into those emotions are actually helping you identify a particular need that you have. And with the work that I do, I always look at it from how can we be healthy? How can we be co-creative? How can we be empowered? How can we get out of the victim? And something to recognize is that the moment that you give responsibility for a need away to another person, you immediately move into the victim stance. And then they become the victimizer. But then we've entered into the victim victimizer dance and you flop back and forth. And then they attack you because they feel like you're the victimizer. And then you attack them, or rather than you feel attacked by them, and then you become the victim. And it can go back and forth for days, months, or years. And so the way out of the victim victimizer dance cycle with accountability, personal responsibility, follow through, is to do that process of what happened. Second process, what are the emotions I'm feeling? Third process, what are all of the needs that I have that I didn't get met in this situation? I didn't feel respected. I didn't feel honored. I didn't feel safe. I didn't feel supported. I didn't feel valued. I didn't feel connected. And then once you go through that process, step 4 is awareness. You just gave responsibility for those needs away to this person. You became the victim. And then you're going to go to anger, frustration, resentment, to try to unconsciously, you don't even realize you're doing it, to try to retrieve those responsibilities for those needs back off of that person. So being kind of radical, and Doug has a slightly different angle, and there's lots of different ways that we can look at this. But explore the idea that when you have a situation in your life when somebody's not being accountable, they're not taking responsibility, they're not following through with what they said that they were going to follow through with, they might even do the opposite. It's your opportunity to identify where you've given responsibility for your needs away to another. And then with that awareness, now you're back in power and you have the ability to retrieve responsibility for those needs off of this person or these people and meet those needs deep in your core. And there is a very specific energetic process that I do with that, but to just be kind of like very 3D, be like, that person didn't respect me. Feel really disrespected by that person. wait, it's not their responsibility to respect me. It's my responsibility to respect myself. Hmm. What if I use my frustration, my anger, my irritation to get that responsibility back and fire them from that job? You're fired. It's not your job. It really never was your job. So sorry I gave it to you. Retrieve the responsibility and ask yourself, how can I respect myself? How can I respect a quality that I have within me that I really value? I respect the pure, the clean, the kind. And then you are meeting your own needs and you move back into your power. And then, because you're back in your power, back in your center, connecting with you, respecting you, whatever it might be, you're now going to have greater discernment about someone's capacity. So a 4-year-old does not have the capacity to respect me. Therefore, I would never give responsibility to a 4-year-old or even a 16-year-old to respect me. They don't have it in them. Now, if I model how I respect myself, now I'm showing the 4-year-old or the 16-year-old how to respect themselves if they choose, but I'm not attached or responsible, clean and clear. So we really want to think about how can we hold a strong, coherent field that positively, empathically impacts others, modeling a solution, holding a safe space, meeting our needs deep in our core and standing in our power and never giving our power away. That's my spin.
Okay, so let me talk about how we teach people to be accountable. So you want to reach agreements with people and you want them to do what they say they're going to do. We have to distinguish between agreements, expectations, and assumptions. Expectations are what we expect other people to do, and expectations can either be conscious or unconscious. They can either be explicit or implicit. Assumptions are things that where I just assume this is the way it is, and because I assume it, I just assume you got it too. So I'm assuming, or we assume that other people are in the same frame of mind we are, or thinking the same way we are, or understand a problem the same way we do. Agreements deal with expectations and get rid of assumptions, because when you have an agreement, the expectation is made explicit, and whatever assumptions that you might have had become embodied in the agreement, so that there's no longer the need to be mind readers, because this is what happens a lot. Somebody thinks that, well, you should have just known. And that really goes back to sort of what I had analogized to an infantile state of mind. When we were little babies, our parents had to intuit what was going on with us because we couldn't communicate. All we could do was cry. We barely could laugh, cry, scream, holler, whatever, if we were uncomfortable or unhappy. And our needs were met, in most families, with reasonable speed. And when we get out of that mode, we become adults, we still carry with us the idea that those that love us will automatically meet our needs without us even having to think about it. And that leads to disaster. So how do we go about dealing with that? Well, it can be a very simple process of simply saying, do you mind taking out the trash? And could you do it in the next 10 minutes? Because I'm going down the driveway and I want to get the trash out. So that's explicit. If you just say, could you please take out the trash? You're putting a what on it, what do you want them to do, but you're not putting any time on it. When is this going to happen? How's it going to happen? Why does it have to happen? Why is it important that you take out the trash? Why am I not able to take out the trash? So there are a lot of assumptions and expectations there. Let's say that you're going to head down the driveway, and you just assume that your partner knows that you're going to drive down the driveway in 10 minutes. And you say, "Can you please take out the trash for me?" And you're getting in your car to go down the driveway, and the trash hasn't been taken out. And now you get all upset because you assumed that your partner would do it right away, or you had expectation that there would be instant obedience. Well, your partner was planning on taking out the trash, but in a couple of hours, because maybe he or she was doing something else that was important to them. And that's how we start getting into these problems where people are not accountable. And if people are not accountable, the first thing you've got to look at is yourself. Did I create a clear expectation in an agreement where what I expected to be done was clearly stated? So it's always about who's involved, what has to be done, when does it have to be done by, where does it have to be done, and how is it going to get done? What are the resources that need to be? So it's who, what, when, where, and how. And, depending upon the nature of the agreement, it could be very quick and informal. But if you're not hitting those 5 adverbs, you're gonna be working on unstated expectations and assumptions. Now, supposing the agreement is going to be a little bit more detailed, and maybe there's trust issues. So there are 2 more things you can add to an agreement. The first is, and this is really good when you're working with children to do it this way. What are all the things that get it in the way of you doing what I'm asking you to do? What are going to be all the things that get in the way of you cleaning up your room every Wednesday night? What are all the things that could prevent you from doing that? And you engage the other person in a conversation about all the things that could go wrong. And you try to make them as broad and long as possible. And brainstorm about, well, how do we prevent that from happening? How do we prevent that from happening? What can we do to keep that from happening? And what you're doing is building in buy-in. You're taking away excuses, and you're also taking away any passive-aggressive hidden agenda by getting commitment to do this and take away all the barriers and blocks that might get in the way of somebody doing what they say they're going to do. The second thing you can do is, well, let's suppose something happens and you're not able to do what you said you were going to do. How should we handle that? So you're talking about and negotiating how to deal with failure early on before people really get upset. And so it could be something as simple as, well, we'll just come back and talk about it and see what we can do to make it right, to, in a more formal situation, well, maybe we should bring in a mediator. Family situation, that might not be, probably usually not appropriate, but sometimes it could be. And so the idea is to be intentional about what you expect people to do for you. And this gets to another really difficult problem, and that is people feel very guilty about asking for their needs to be met. They feel very guilty asking other people to do stuff for them because we've been brought up in this myth of self-reliance and rugged individualism, and we were taught from a very young age not to be selfish, that when you ask for your own needs to be met, you're being selfish. Well, that had its place, between 2 and 6 years old. But the problem is our parents never really came back and reprogrammed us when we were approaching adulthood, saying, oh, now, by the way, all that stuff we taught you about selfishness, and that was good for then, but what you have to understand now is you have to be able to ask for your own needs to be met. They'll never talk about that because it never occurs to them to reprogram us or to deprogram the childhood programming that was necessary to teach us social skills and to acculturate, but are not so important when you get in closer to adulthood. And so we carry in all this childhood programming that served us well in childhood, but does not serve us well in adulthood. And that gets people into tremendous problems and difficulties. So from my perspective, if you want people to do what they say they're going to do, be explicit and make sure they are explicit back. So there's a process we teach called speak, check, reflect, which seems kind of redundant and silly, but if the agreement is important enough, it really makes sure that everybody understands and are on the same page. So speak, check, reflect would go like something like, so Alea, I'll just do this with you. So Alea, I'd really like you to go to the hardware store and pick up some nails and some lumber, and I've got a list. Can you do that for me?
Yes, I can go to the.
What do you understand? What do you just understand me to say?
Oh, do you want me to do the right thing or what
Do the right thing.
yeah. Yes, I can go to the hardware store because I'm going to the hardware store and I can get you some nails and I can get you some lumber and you have a list and you're giving me the list. I'm going to get everything on that list. Um, is there anything else?
No. So what you said that you understood me to say was that you're going to the hardware store and you'll pick up some nails for me and you'll also pick up the lumber on my list for me.
Yes.
Thanks. So we've got great clarity.
Yeah.
So notice
Well,
in that process, I spoke, she, and I checked in with her. What do you understand me to say? Not what I said, but what you understood me to say. There's a big difference there. And then when she was completed her check, I reflected back what she said so she could hear what I understood her to say. Now we'll do it again, and this time Alea will make a mistake, and you'll see what happens. So Alea, I know you're going up to the hardware store later tomorrow. Do you mind picking me up a box of number 10 nails? And I've got a list of lumber here that I need to build that project for you out in the back.
yeah. So you want me to go to the hardware store. So I'll go to the hardware store and I'll get you your stuff.
So what you said was that you're going to go to the hardware store and get my stuff. What I really said was that I'd like you to pick up a box of nails for me and get this lumber list that I've got for you completely fulfilled. What did you understand me to say?
Oh, you want me to get you nails and lumber.
Well, what you said was that I want you to get you nails and lumber. That's pretty close. But really what I need is a box of number 10 nails and all of the lumber on the list that I'm giving you. What did you just understand me to say?
Got it. So you want me to go to the lumber store. So I'm going to go to the lumber store and I'm going to get a box of nails and it's the number 10 nails and it's just one box of number 10 nails. And then I'm also going to get all of the lumber that's on your list.
So what you just said was that you're going to go to the hardware store and get a box of number 10 nails for me and all of the lumber on my list. Thank you.
And this practice is heaven for the dyslexic ADD creature. Heaven.
So it may seem like, wow, why do I have to go through this speak, check, reflect stuff? And well, obviously you don't have to do this all the time. But if you've got somebody that is habitually getting stuff wrong, or where there's very little trust, or where the task is a little complicated and you need to have clarity over what's going on, using speak, check, reflect can be a very powerful way to make sure that everybody understands what the expectation is. Just as you saw in that example, I can ask a simple task, a box of number 10 nails and pick up the lumber on the list. And Leia thinks she's got it. Oh yeah, you just want to go to the hardware store and get stuff. But then she gets there and completely freezes out on, oh, what was that stuff he wanted me to get? How did he want me to do that? And then, then she got to text me, and of course I never watch my text, so I don't know what's going on. And she comes back and says, oh, I'm really sorry, I didn't get your stuff. I couldn't remember what it was. And that can create some friction. So the way you stop that is by making sure that there's clarity. And it's my responsibility as the person making the request to make sure there's absolute clarity between the two of us. And if there is lack of clarity or my expectation is not clearly stated, that's on me. and yes, you say, well, God, anybody can figure that one out. I said, no, you can't make that assumption about people. Even somebody you know really well, you just can't make that assumption. There could be all kinds of distractions or problems going on that you're not aware of that cause the other person to not listen to you, to not understand, to interpret what you're saying in a different way, to misunderstand what you're saying. There are just a million different ways communication like this can fall apart. So when it's important, you, as the person requesting help, have got to take the responsibility of being very specific and making absolutely certain that the person you're making the request understands exactly what you want. And that's when we use speak, check, reflect. The more you do this, the more accountable people will be. They will tend to do what they say they're going to do because you're taking away any confusion. And But when they repeat back and what they understand you to want, and you reflect back what they said, and they understand that they got the message clearly, it's much more likely that they're going to do what they say they're going to do. So that's how we build accountable agreements, and it's simple and it's powerful, but it's not something that many people do, either because they haven't been taught about it, or they don't think about it, or they just don't know. And so they are relegated to being frustrated, and as Alea said, frustrated, angry, resentful, feeling disrespected because other people are not doing what they say they're going to do. Now, some people will say, well, gee, I don't have time to do all that, Doug. Jesus Christ. I mean, you're making me do all this stuff. This is crazy. That's their job to do this stuff. I said, no, not their job. If you're a leader of a group and you have to delegate stuff, you better be darn sure that whatever you're delegating is crystal clear and it's understood crystal clear, because otherwise you don't know what you're going to get back. And you can say, well, it's their job to know that. It's your job to do that. I said, it may or may not be. But if you're giving specific instructions, you have to follow up. You're the one who has to take responsibility for making them accountable, and it starts with creating absolute clarity. Who, what, when, where, how, and maybe even why. And figure out what are the barriers that are going to get in the way, and what do we do if you don't do this. And the more you do that, the more people will tend to be accountable for themselves. And we can talk about what do you do when people don't do what they say they're going to do. Well, at that point in time, what you need to do is have another conversation with them. Hey, what happened, man? I thought we agreed that you were going to do X, Y, Z. He said, oh, yeah. And so, well, maybe I wasn't clear about, you always take the shame away. Maybe I wasn't clear about what I expect you to do. Let's go back and rethink this. I thought that our agreement was, and the agreement. And was there something about that just wasn't clear to you, or no, I just screwed up. I didn't do it. Oh, what got in your way? And I forgot, I was lazy, it got past me, whatever it might be. And said, well, didn't we talk about that? We talked about the barriers, some things that would get in the way, and was one of them? He said, oh, yeah, we did. All right, well, so are you still willing to do this? Yeah, well, when do you think you can get it done? Okay, I can get it done tomorrow. Okay, great. So let's see if you can get it done tomorrow. And because I really need this to be done. So let's go back through the agreement again. What did we agree on? Here are all the elements. All right, great. Now, if they do it, then the next thing you've got to do is you've got to recognize it. The way you motivate people to be accountable is when they are accountable to thank them. So I would say, hey, Alea, when you went up to the hardware store and picked up that box of number 10 nails and got that lumber list for me, I was really grateful because you saved me, it's a long drive up the hill to the hardware store, and I was able to get the project done, your project done that you wanted me to get done. I was able to get it done a lot faster and more efficiently. So thank you very much. And then she says,
You feel really respected.
no.
Oh.
Go ahead, blow off the compliment.
Oh. Well, yeah, it's not a big deal.
Oh, I know it wasn't a big deal, Alea. When you went up to the hardware store and bought that number 10 box of nails and got the lumber for me, I felt really grateful and cared for it because you were able to really help me save a lot of time.
It was easy.
So I know it was really easy, but when you went up to the hardware store to buy that box of number 10 nails and get that lumber for me, it really made a big difference for me, and I'm really grateful. Thank you for doing that.
You're welcome.
Thank you. So you keep repeating back. You reflect back, oh, I know it was really easy. But when you went up and you just keep repeating back what they did and how it made you feel until you get you're welcome. You're not going to let them get off the hook by saying, oh, it was no big deal. Nothing, de nada, no big deal. It's what people do all the time because they're uncomfortable accepting praise and gratitude. Again, this goes back to childhood programming.
And then they're emotionally invalidating themselves with that.
That's right, and they emotionally invalidate themselves. So When you take the time to give them a recognition statement and stick with them until you get a "you're welcome," you motivate them to be accountable to you again in the future and to themselves. So that's the third part of all of this, is that you have to be in a position where you can elicit a "you're welcome" before you let it go. And if you just engage in these simple little practices, the detail depends upon the circumstance, of course. But if you engage in making durable agreements by being very specific about what you need, who, what, when, where, why, how, and then look at the barriers, and then look, what do we do if the wheels fall off? Do all that. If they don't do what they say they're going to say, then you engage in a recommitment discussion. Find out what their commitment is. Find out what happened. See if you can get them recommitted. And finally, if they do what they say they're going to do, give them a gratitude statement. What did they do? How did it make you feel? So I'm doing my own self-affect labeling and do that. And you stick with it. Don't let them get by with a blow off. Stick with it. Keep coming back to it until you get a "you're welcome," so they can really deeply accept and receive your gratitude. And you will find that you're not going to get everybody to do everything they say they do all the time, but I bet you'll get 50 to 60% better performance from people doing stuff that you want them to do than what is happening right now. It's really, these simple little things are just so simple and so easy, and they make such a huge difference.
Um, one of the pieces that does come to mind is that so I'm just thinking about my own self and my own journey. When there is a task that needs to be done that's really important, like I have this check and it needs to go in the mail, it has to get mailed, it has to get mailed today, or I have a package and it has to get mailed. There's a level of anxiety that I have because I'm handing the task over to somebody else. And so what I have found with the verify, clarify practice is that it is incredibly soothing for my own anxiety when somebody verifies and clarifies that they've heard me and that they are in agreement with this task, this thing happening. So, for example, I would say to Doug, this product needs to get mailed. It has to get mailed today. It has to have insurance for $300. And then when he verifies and clarifies, like I have to mail this package today. It has to be insured for $300. I can feel how deep in his core he's getting what needs to happen, and he's not going to drop the ball because he's acknowledging, he's taking time to reflect to me that this is really important, and he's not going to drop the ball on it. And so it's a practice of love as well with the people in your life, because you're creating this opportunity for them to say to you, you're important, I love you, and I am willing to do this for you. And when you do the verify, clarify, yeah, it does take 20 seconds more, 2 minutes more, 3 minutes more, or maybe a conversation before you bring in the verify, clarify practice. Like you can't just be like, so we've never talked about verify and clarify. And Doug, will you go to the hardware store and get me a box of nails and my lumber? And you'll be like, yeah, sure. And you'll be like, no, you have to verify and clarify. And you'll be like, I have no idea what you're talking about. So in a non-triggered, totally neutral moment, talk about this as a practice, a way of communicating with things that are not super emotional, but have a level of importance, like the trash, the dishes, the mail, the window, the door that needs to get closed to keep the cat in.
So one of the ways to think about doing this is just to ask, what do you just understand that I said? And if you do that in a really disarming way, hey, would you, not what you heard me say, but what do you understand that I need you to do? And just ask that question without Doug's intensity. And, and oftentimes that's enough to get things going. And you do the speak, check, reflect, which is a form of verifying and clarifying. So you always want to, here's a way that we like to remember it. You want to, your best friends are Vera and Clara. They're the Phi sisters, verify and clarify. And you want to really hang out with Vera and Clara because that way you really stop messing around with that noisy neighbor misunderstood.
That's cute.
So think
No,
about
I like being very casual about it, because otherwise it's like, it's not like when you're casual, you don't feel like you're living in therapy world where, so I'll say to Doug, I have a Vera Clara moment. I need, like, we're going to hang out with those two. And that's your immediate cue of, well, we're going to verify and clarify. So I can just go Vera Clara moment. And then we drop into it and you just reflect back what I need or vice versa. So let it be casual, let it be funny. And Vera and Clara,
your new best friends.
yeah.